Nigel Farage at the Brexit Party standing down a number of his candidates. Can I just establish what might have gone on behind the scenes? Did you have discussions with Nigel Farage, or is this just based on the statements that the Prime Minister tweeted over the weekend?
Well, I'm not aware of any formal conversations, and I think the Prime Minister was unequivocal about that when he was asked that question yesterday. But what I am glad is that Nigel Farage has realised that if you believe Brexit should be delivered, that the result of the referendum should be respected, then the only way to get that outcome is to vote for a majority Conservative government so that we can get this thing done, move on to talking about other people's priorities. And I'm delighted that he's realised that, and hopefully everyone will see that and realise that a majority Conservative government is the way forward.
So I want to just establish where we are then, because Nigel Farage says that one of the reasons he's done this is because Boris Johnson has ruled out an extension of the Brexit transition period beyond the end of next year. What happens if, during the transition, we can't negotiate a deal with the EU? Does that mean that we could still crash out with no deal?
I think so. I mean, we're talking about all these hypotheticals down the line. First of all, we need to actually leave the European Union, and the only way to do that is to have a majority Conservative government that then votes through the deal that the Prime Minister negotiated. And all this talk about what happens down the line. Remember, this is a deal that the Prime Minister was told was impossible to negotiate. No one said that it would be possible. He did it in less than 100 days.
I appreciate all of that, but if Nigel Farage, I know that Nigel Farage still wanted no deal to be an option. And I'm just wondering now, if you're voting Conservative because you want Brexit to happen, is there still a possibility that we could crash out with no deal under a Tory government?
What I say is, if you're voting Conservative now, what you're voting for is for the deal that the Prime Minister negotiated to pass through Parliament to get us out of the EU by the end of January so that we can start focusing on all the other priorities like the NHS, schools and police that people want us to focus on. That's what you get with a majority Conservative government. You know, Brexit delivered in a matter of weeks, a focus on all these other things in contrast to yet more delay, going around in circles with more referendums on Brexit with everybody else. That's what Nigel Farage has recognised, I think, and I'm glad he has, and I think that is a message that will resonate across the country.
OK, there is a report which includes evidence from UK intelligence agencies concerning Russian attempts to influence the outcome of the 2016 EU referendum and 2017 general election. It was compiled by the Parliamentary Intelligence and Security Committee, referred to the Prime Minister's office on the 17th of October, and this is cleared for publication by the beginning of next week. It will not be released before the UK goes to the polls on December the 12th. Why is that report not being released yet to the public?
So, as you said, it was received by Number 10 on about or just towards the end of October. I think, and my understanding is, as is typical with reports like this, is that they take up to 6 or 7 weeks to clear all the various vetting processes they have to go through because of the sensitive nature of the information they contain. That is perfectly normal. That's what's happened here, and the committee has been updated during that
Sunday Times
process.
identified 9 Conservative Party donors from Russia who were named in the report. I mean, surely you should be absolutely desperate to be transparent and to show, particularly after what happened, as Hillary Clinton says, with the American election and all the question marks that were around there involving Russian influence and so on, surely it's incumbent on you as a government to make sure the British public, before we go to vote again, have complete transparency about this report detailing what Russians have done what.
Well, I think it's also incumbent upon the government to make sure that sensitive information is handled appropriately. The nature of these reports is that they do contain sensitive information, which is why they need to go through an appropriate period of vetting to make sure that they are safe to then be released. That's what's happened here. It was received only towards the end of October. Parliament was dissolved in the first week of November. That didn't give sufficient time for that process to clear.
But Mr. Sunak, the chair of the committee, Dominic Grieve, says that it doesn't need weeks. It can be done in a matter of perhaps 10 days. I mean, what people are concerned about is that there is something political about this delay.
No, not at all. This is procedural. This was discussed in Parliament before Parliament was dissolved. Dominic Grieve is entitled to his view, but there's previous precedent for the length of time that these reports do take to clear the various processes. But I think it's absolutely right to focus on the threat that Russia poses. And when it comes to that threat, presumably, I hope Hillary Clinton was also asked what she thought of when Russia, carried out an attack in our country in Salisbury. We had the leader of the opposition essentially siding with the Russian government in that episode. I think that's very worrying for our national security. You had Emily Thornberry, I think, on your show yesterday, unable to answer a simple question about Jeremy Corbyn using our nuclear deterrent to keep us safe.
Yeah, but those are the
questions about Russia that I think should be being asked.
But the trouble is, this is a report from the Intelligence Committee, whose own chair, who is a member, or was a member, of your party, who says there is no reason for this extended delay. I mean, it sort of stinks to a lot of voters at a time when you want to look transparent, at a time of a general election, and people want to know that the general election is being fought fairly. This is the time to release a report, isn't it?
Well, you can't just release reports that contain sensitive information that impacts our national security. I'm obviously not a member of the National Security Council. I haven't seen the report. It is absolutely normal that reports like this go through a period of vetting, which does take several weeks to make sure that they are safe or there are bits that need to be redacted.
Okay.
And there's not much more on that I can say, but
Let me ask you one question about this. One of the donors mentioned in the report is Alexander Temerko, who has worked for the Kremlin Defence Ministry and gifted more than £1.2 million to the Conservatives over 7 years. Who is that guy and what's he been doing?
Piers, I can't comment on leaks from a classified report that I myself haven't seen. There's just nothing more I can say on
Alexander Temerko?
I do know of him, but I can't comment on what a report might or might not say, which is classified.
What has he been expecting in return for his £1.2 million donation?
All donations to the Conservative Party, as you would expect, are rightly disclosed, follow all proper procedure.
But do you feel comfortable? Do you feel comfortable in light of the
fully transparent and disclosed there, and they're all online for anybody to see?
Since you're so keen on transparency, do you feel comfortable after the quite obvious way that the Russians attacked the American election in 2016, before, during and after, and are continuing to try and attack the democratic process? Are you happy that the Conservatives have had 9 different donors from Russia?
I'm happy that all proper processes are followed with any donor, wherever they come from, the UK or elsewhere, that they follow proper procedure. Our party follows all the proper procedures. All those donations are disclosed transparently as required by the Electoral Commission.
They are all online. My question, I'm not suggesting for a moment that Alexander Temerko has done anything wrong. I'm just saying that he has worked for the Kremlin Defence Ministry and he's donating over £1 million to the Conservative Party during a very sensitive period for our country politically. And the inference from many critics, as you know, is that the Russians have been trying to buy influence and indeed operate online influence to try and affect the result of referendums and elections here. It's a matter of massive national interest.
Well, I think people can judge us on our actions. I mean, Russia carried out an attack on our country. What did you see from a Conservative government? You saw a very robust response, led actually by the Prime Minister, who was Foreign Secretary at the time, coordinating the largest expulsion of Russian spies and diplomats across the world that we'd ever seen. That was a government standing up to Russian aggression on our soil. So I think any idea that anyone's being soft on Russia is clearly not true. And in contrast, you did have the leader of the opposition essentially siding with Russia and not sticking up for what was best for Britain. So I think if people are worried about what Russia and the UK, I think they should look at that experience and draw their own conclusions.
Well, they'd like to look at the report, actually, and draw their own conclusions.
We'd all like to see the report, and I'd like to see it before I cast my vote in a few weeks' time. Just on the matter you raised about Emily Thornberry's interview yesterday, this issue of Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the opposition, potentially the next Prime Minister, who is on record as saying he would never use our nuclear deterrent, and yet the Labour Party supports the renewal of the Trident system. What is your reaction to that?
Oh, I think the interview yesterday on your show was very telling. I mean, Emily Thornberry just could not give a straight answer to this very clear question about Labour's position on our nuclear deterrent. I personally believe it's a cornerstone of our defence, of our security. It keeps us safe. We've got a Labour leader who, throughout history, has seemed to side with Britain's enemies. And that's not just me saying that. That's former Labour MPs, long-standing members of the Labour Party, who we saw last week, making that point. We've had former Labour foreign secretaries, defence secretaries, all expressing concern in the last couple of weeks about his fitness for office and our ability to keep us safe.
Could you also see a position where there are plenty of people who think they don't want a Prime Minister who would be pressing a nuclear button which would cause death and destruction for millions? And there are plenty of strong allies who don't have nuclear weapons. Is it not a bit odd to be arguing that it's really important that we have a Prime Minister who would be prepared to press a nuclear button? Actually, some people might think Jeremy Corbyn, millions of people might think Jeremy Corbyn is right to take that position.
Well, my position in the Conservative Party position is very clear. We believe that having a nuclear deterrent is a cornerstone of our defence and security. But what I think people will find it odd, as they did yesterday, is for a party to spend an enormous amount of money on a nuclear deterrent, which they then say that they will never use, which undermines the whole purpose of it.
Would you feel comfortable
and they cost money. I think
that button?
that feels like a very odd situation to be in.
Can you understand why Emily Thornberry might be arguing for ambiguity? Because would you feel comfortable pressing a button?
No, I don't understand, because the whole premise of the deterrent, if you're not going to use it, it doesn't really serve its purpose as a deterrent. So it is a slightly odd position to take. But more broadly, I think it just betrays a position which is reasonably soft on defence and on security, whether that's keeping us safe from enemies abroad, and that's what the nuclear deterrent is about, or whether that's keeping us safe at home and actually making sure that there's police on our streets, that we have tough sentencing laws, we're using stop and search. People want to be safe in their communities, and that's something that we offer, and
Jeremy Corbyn has been very soft on. A couple of very quick questions before we let you go. James Cleverly came on to try and justify the Conservative Party's faking of a Good Morning Britain interview with Keir Starmer, changing the ending to make it look like he couldn't answer a question. James Cleverly defended it and wouldn't apologise. Now you've all had time to reflect on that blatant fakery. Would you like to apologise?
Well, look, I would say that video that was done was done in the spirit of jest, in humour.
It was a fake.
But you are right, and perhaps the humour didn't work. It went a bit too far, or it didn't quite work in that regard, and there are some lessons to be learned there. So I can appreciate that.
So you're sorry that you faked it?
No, I said it. I think it probably did go a bit too far, and there's some lessons we can learn. I can appreciate that.
It wasn't a joke. It was a fake. You actually faked the ending.
It was done in the spirit of humour, but I can appreciate it didn't land properly, and it probably went a bit too far. I think you're right on that. But I think it does. But it does betray a broader point about Labour's Brexit policy.
We don't want fake news in an election period.
The point it betrays is that you guys deliberately faked one of our interviews to create a false impression to affect the electorate. Do you accept that?
No, as I said, it was a video that was done in jest, and I can appreciate and I acknowledge, and I say you're right. It went too far, and I can acknowledge that. No, I can say I'm sorry that it went a bit too far. That clearly, in hindsight, is what happened. But I think the point that it was trying to make, that Labour's position on Brexit, is not one that is clear.
You can make points, but
it's not one that is clear.
What we'd like is
just
Mr.
Sunak,
we'd just like a clear admission that you faked it.
It was a video that was created in the spirit of humour. All short clips are created and spliced together from different bits of footage.
Did you fake the ending or not?
I actually haven't seen the video, so I can't see what the whole thing was.
Let me play it for you.
Well, I can't see it in this studio.
Well, there we go.
You can hear it.
I'm acknowledging
Here's the original.
But I'm voting for you as my political representative, for instance, as one of your voters. Do you want to leave or remain?
I've said many times what my personal position.
You want to remain?
But that's missing the point.
So am I voting to stay in the EU? Sorry, it's just we're running out of time, and I just want to be clear what Labour's policy is. Are we leaving or remaining?
We are going to, within 6 months, have a referendum, and we're going to say, here's the best deal that can be secured, and it's going to go up against Remain, and we're going to let the public decide the answer to that question.
It's such a good deal that you yourself would vote against it.
Well, we're duty-bound to get the best possible deal. Of course we are, because we
Can
don't
it
want
be a
something
really
that...
good deal if you're going to vote against it?
Well, we're duty-bound to get the best deal we can, and I think that's something that secures our economy and is consistent with the Good Friday Agreement.
Why would the EU give you a good deal if they know that you're going to actively campaign against it?
And you can probably hear that the edit suggests that Keir Starmer is silent at the end, whereas in reality, Keir Starmer gave us an answer.
So your bottom line is you faked it. You changed the ending to make it look like he couldn't answer the question. All I want is an admission that you faked it. None of you will admit you faked it.
No, well, I admit that it was a video that was put together from bits of footage. I can appreciate the point it was trying to convey obviously wasn't conveyed in a manner that...
Why don't you just hold your hand up and go, we faked it and we're sorry?
The footage is not fake. The
footage
video
was fake.
is comprised of actual footage. And I think the point...
Let me show you the original. Let me show you the original of that final bit. Here's the original of the final bit.
All I'm hearing...
Here's the original. You give you a good deal if they know that you're going to actively campaign against it. Which is
Piers,
clearly what most of you are going to be doing.
Well, Piers, I have been talking to the EU, to political leaders across the EU 27 countries.
So, quite clearly, he immediately answered the question. You faked
I'm
it to make it look like he
unclear.
didn't have an answer.
Well, I'm personally unclear.
Mr. Sunak,
listening
we
to
can
all of
keep
that.
having you guys on day in, day out. One of you, at some stage, has just got to look down the barrel of that camera and go, we faked it and we're sorry.
But I have said it didn't. I said it didn't work. It was meant to be done in humour. It went too far. I've said that already.
Yeah, what you haven't said is an admission that you faked it.
But the video is made up of real clips.
No, the video is faked. You took a different ending and inserted it to make it look like Keir Starmer didn't answer a question when he did.
That
is called fakery.
Maybe you can help me.
It's a fake.
Maybe you can help me. I'm still unclear as to Labour is going to vote for or against staying in the European Union at the end of their second referendum.
We will question them robustly, as indeed we will question them robustly, as indeed we did. The only thing I want you guys to do is just admit you faked the video.
As I said, I have acknowledged that it was done in a spirit of humour. That didn't work. It went too far. There are lessons to be learned from that. So I've said that to you already.
Yeah. It's one of the lessons that you shouldn't fake videos.
OK.
I still think we are unclear as to what the position is. When we have this yet more referendums next year, going around in circles talking about Brexit, there's still no clear answer to the Labour position on this question.
Does Boris Johnson keep his promises?
As you've seen, since he's got into office, everyone said, oh, you couldn't get a deal, you wouldn't be able to renegotiate it, you don't want a deal. He's got a deal.
Yep.
We're going to leave with a deal if we get a majority Conservative government. That is something that everybody said.
Is he a man I can trust to keep his promises?
It's a yes or no answer, Mr. Sunak.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah? So when he promised to give us an interview 4 weeks ago...
Oh, gosh.
Where is it?
Well, you know, I'm not privy to your chats with the Prime Minister about his interview schedule.
You said it on TV.
Well,
to our viewers.
Well,
tell Piers I'm
him.
definitely doing it in the next couple of weeks. It's now been 4 weeks.
Well, you've had people like me on your show every day.
You're not Boris Johnson.
Well, I'm not, but we're here to talk about what the government is doing.
We're here to talk about whether we can believe Boris Johnson when he makes a promise. Well, and my point to you is, if he can't even keep a promise about an interview, why should I trust him about Brexit?
Because everyone said, oh, you won't be able to get a deal. You don't want a deal. He did want a deal. He got a deal.
He said he was going to die in a ditch.
If we get a majority
Conservative government. He said, I will die in a ditch.
By October the 31st.
I will die in a ditch if we don't leave on October the 31st. And as far as I last looked, he's still alive. He's not in a ditch dead.
He didn't keep that promise.
And you know what? That's why we're having this election, because Parliament, in all its wisdom, decided to block us leaving and make sure that's not possible. And that's why we're having this election to get Brexit done and move on.
If you see your leader later, maybe just suggest he keep his promise to us. We'd appreciate it.
Rishi Sunak, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.